You know, being a dog isn't all sniffing hydrants and chasing tails, especially when you find yourself in a place where humans build entire worlds out of wood and paint. One day, I'm lounging in my favorite sunny spot, and the next thing I know, my human, Carl Spitz, tells me I'm going to be in something called a movie. I don't know what that is, but if it involves treats, count me in. When I first set paw on that big, noisy place they call MGM Studios, I thought I'd wandered into the world's largest dog park. Except, instead of trees and grass, there were giant buildings that looked like they belonged in a storybook. And boy, the smells! Freshly cut lumber, weird chemicals, and the ever-present aroma of humans in a hurry. Then I met her, Dorothy, though everyone else called her Judy Garland. From the moment she scratched me behind the ears, I knew she was my kind of human. She had this way of looking at me like I was the only dog in the world. And let me tell you, I've met a lot of humans, but none quite like Dorothy. "Hey there, little guy," she said, kneeling down so we were nose to nose. "We're going to be best friends, aren't we?" I licked her nose to seal the deal. Best friends? Absolutely. Especially if she kept those treats coming. Now, the other humans on set were a curious bunch. Take the Tin Man, for instance. Shiniest human I've ever seen. Every time he moved, he squeaked like a toy I once had. I couldn't help but wonder if he needed a good chew to loosen up. One day, I tried nibbling on his leg to help out, but Carl told me that wasn't part of the script. Humans and their funny words. Then there was the Scarecrow. Now, here's a fellow who was literally stuffed with fun. Straw sticking out everywhere. It was like he was wearing a suit made of chew toys. I spent a good part of one afternoon tugging at the straw from his boots while he chuckled and tried to dance away. "Careful, Toto! You'll unravel me before we finish the scene," he'd laugh. Unravel him? Now there's a challenge. The Cowardly Lion was another story. Big, fluffy, and wore a mane that looked like the world's comfiest bed. I often thought about curling up in it for a nap. Once, during a break, I did just that. He didn't seem to mind. In fact, he started purring, or maybe that was snoring. Hard to tell with humans in costumes. But let's talk about the Wicked Witch. Green face, pointy hat, cackling laugh, the whole deal. At first, I thought she was the world's largest cat toy. I mean, who wears a hat with a feather that big? So, naturally, I tried to catch it. She wasn't too pleased. "Oh, Toto, you mischievous mutt," she'd exclaim, shaking her finger at me. But then she'd sneak me a piece of sausage when no one was looking. Deep down, I think she was a dog person. Now, the work itself was a bit confusing. We'd walk down this shiny, yellow road that didn't smell anything like the outdoors. Action, the big human with the loud voice would shout, and everyone would start doing their thing. I figured out pretty quickly that action meant it was time to be on my best behavior, or at least pretend to be. One time, during a scene where we were supposed to be afraid of something called a wizard, I got distracted by a tiny creature scurrying across the floor. A mouse! Well, duty calls. I took off after it, weaving between legs and props. The whole set erupted in laughter, and the big loud human yelled, "Cut," which I learned means stop the fun. Dorothy scooped me up, laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. "Oh, Toto, you're going to steal the show." Steal? I wasn't stealing anything, just doing my job as chief rodent chaser. Dorothy and I spent a lot of time together. Between scenes, she'd sit with me, humming songs and telling me about Kansas, a place with open fields and lots of room to run. It sounded wonderful. I didn't really understand what acting was, but I knew that when Dorothy was happy, I was happy. "Someday, we'll go over the rainbow, Toto," she'd say, gazing off into the distance. I wasn't sure what a rainbow was, but if it involved more treats and ear scratches, I was all in. The Munchkins were a hoot. Tiny humans dressed in colorful outfits, singing and dancing around. They liked to sneak me bits of their lunches, which I appreciated greatly. One even tried to teach me to dance on my hind legs. It didn't go well, but it made them laugh, so mission accomplished. The flying monkeys, however, were another matter. Whoever thought it was a good idea to put wings on monkeys clearly didn't consult any dogs. Those things were terrifying. They'd swoop down from the rafters, and I'd bark up a storm, trying to warn everyone of the impending doom. The humans thought it was hilarious. "Look at Toto, really getting into character," they'd say. Character? I was trying to save their lives. The biggest challenge was the scene with the poppy fields. They wanted me to pretend to fall asleep among the flowers. Easy enough, right? Except the flowers were fake and they smelled weird, like paint and glue. I kept sneezing, which apparently wasn't in the script. They had to reshoot that scene several times. Eventually, they sprinkled some kind of powder that made me feel drowsy, and I dozed off for real. Best nap I've ever had. One day, Dorothy didn't seem herself. She sat quietly, not humming or smiling like usual. I nudged her hand with my nose, and she looked down at me with watery eyes. "What's wrong, girl?" I barked softly. She hugged me tightly. "Oh, Toto, sometimes I wish I could just click my heels and be back home." I didn't know much about heels or clicking, but I understood the longing in her voice. I licked her cheek, and she giggled. "You're right," she said. "As long as I have you, I'm not alone." That moment, I realized that Dorothy needed me just as much as I needed her. We were more than co-stars, we were family. As filming went on, I got used to the routine. Wake up, get pampered, perform some tricks, get treats, nap, repeat. Not a bad gig for a dog. The humans seemed to think what we were doing was important, so I played along. One afternoon, a bigwig producer came by. He patted me on the head and said, "This dog is going to be famous." Famous? Is that like getting an extra biscuit at dinner? Because if so, sign me up. When we finally wrapped up filming, there was a big party. Lots of food, most of which I wasn't supposed to eat but did anyway, music, and laughter. Dorothy held me close as we watched everyone celebrate. "We did it, Toto," she whispered. "We're off to great places." I wasn't sure where these great places were, but as long as Dorothy was there, I was ready for the adventure. Back home, things returned to normal, or as normal as they could be after all that excitement. Carl was proud of me, and I got extra belly rubs, which is always a plus. But I missed Dorothy. I wondered if she missed me too. Then one day, Carl showed me a picture in a magazine. There we were, Dorothy and me, on the cover. I barked excitedly, and Carl laughed. "You're a star now, Toto." Star? I thought those were the twinkly things in the sky. If being a star meant more people knew where to scratch behind my ears, I was all for it. As time went on, people started recognizing me during our walks. Children would run up to pet me, calling out my name. I soaked up the attention, of course. After all, who doesn't like a good pat on the head? One day, we got a letter from Dorothy. Well, Carl read it to me, but I knew it was from her because it smelled like the perfume she always wore. She wrote about how much she missed me and hoped we could work together again someday. I wagged my tail so hard I nearly knocked over a lamp. Work together again? Count me in! I barked enthusiastically, and Carl smiled. Maybe someday, little guy. Maybe someday. Looking back, those days on the movie set were some of the best of my life. I may not have understood everything that was going on, but I knew I was part of something special. And most importantly, I had made a friend for life in Dorothy. So that's my story, a dog's tale of chasing squirrels, dodging flying monkeys, and finding friendship over the rainbow. Not bad for a pup from the kennel, huh? Epilogue. These days, life is a bit slower. I spend my afternoons napping in sunny spots and dreaming of yellow brick roads. Every so often, Carl puts on that movie we made. I watch intently, barking at my old friends on the screen. There's Dorothy! I wag my tail as she sings our song. Carl chuckles. You never get tired of that, do you, Toto? Nope. Not one bit. Sometimes, I think about what Dorothy said, that we're off to great places. Maybe we didn't get to go on another adventure together, but the memories we made are enough to fill a lifetime. And who knows? Maybe in another world, over that rainbow she talked about, we're still walking side by side, chasing squirrels and singing songs. Until then, I'm content right here, knowing that once upon a time, I was more than just a dog, I was a friend.